With me now, the sports psychologist Kevin George. A very, very tragic case, and particularly for those of us who aren't involved in sport, because we assume that young people, this sort of fitness, this sort of life, are okay, but for many of them they're not.
They're managing so much pressure to compete, to be chosen, but also they're very aware of the investment that their parents make in their lives, whether it be financial or whether it be the emotional, labouring them to and from training. So they are carrying a lot, the young people.
And we heard that Ellie was tipped over the edge by a missed flight because she felt she was letting people down.
Yeah, and that's the pressure they carry. I mean, for every performance, or if it's going to be something like missing a flight, that's what can send you over the edge.
What should be done? And well, how many other Ellies are there out there, do you think?
Loads. I mean, across all sports, but also just in day-to-day life. I think the biggest thing we can do is educate young people so they can self-intervene. So Ellie can actually acknowledge what the situation is, but also separate herself from it. So we can never get rid of the pressure, especially at elite sport, but we can acknowledge what it is and think, okay, how can I manage this situation?
I mean, tragically, Ellie can't. And those that find it difficult to cope, there's that added pressure that there wasn't only a few years ago of, well, social media. There are other pressures that come into sport that weren't always there.
Yes, exactly, and there's always going to be more and more things that add to make it worse. But at the end of the day, if we develop emotional literacy within our young people, and not just young people, but people in general, we can manage our situations a lot more better.
Does that include, I mean, would that include a sports coach saying, do you know what, winning isn't the most important thing?
1,000%, but it's going to need more than that as well. And I feel that staff working within the professional arena need, I feel, some kind of qualifications around therapy. A lot of the spaces now do have psychologists there, but they spend a lot of their time with their coach, and sometimes their coach could be the one actually bringing the problems. So I feel that definitely coaches within those spaces need to maybe have it as part of their badges.
So no coach should turn around and say, if only I'd known?
Yeah, exactly.
What sort of help should be offered to youngsters who, in some ways, physically, obviously, are fairly invincible? They're at the top of their sports game. But how do you tell if the mind is not as, well, ready for everything as the body is?
And when you say how do we tell in terms of the staff, how do the staff tell? It's difficult because we're all actors, we all play a role in different environments. It's so difficult for staff to tell, but I feel that if they are very aware of, potentially the pressures that young people carry, or the lack of confidence, or the limiting beliefs, all of those things, that every day becomes an education, whether it be walking to the training field or, going to the places where they compete. It could be little conversations, and they might pick up just little signs, or even how they see, when the parents drop off their children, if something's not right. So it's all these little things that add up.
What are the signs, Kevin? What do you see and you say, hang on, there may be a problem there, we need to investigate?
I think sometimes you can look at, and there's so many, I'm going to use an example, maybe that of parents, the relationship between parents and children. But if you look at maybe an intense relationship with a parent and a child, and that is not being replicated in other areas, i.e. in the schooling or just socially, if it's just around the sport, that child might think, well, do you know what? I don't even know if I really want to compete in this sport, but my mum and dad invested so much money, they invested so much time, and they're critiquing me probably more than my coach, and I want to leave, but I can't because they put so much into this. And a coach might see that. And it might not be so obvious. It could be little signs, but I think when you're trained, it sharpens your eye a bit more.
There's something especially tragic about someone who, look at these pictures of Ellie, dies on her 18th birthday, and from the outside seems to have everything to live for.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many Ellies out there. As I said, outside of sport, but also within sport, there are so many stories. We have it in football, you have it in boxing, you have it all over the place. Ideally, if I think I could have an ideal situation, I think that it wouldn't even just be in sport. I think within education, we'll be talking about emotional literacy. I think so. It's not just a case of we're talking about Ellie, because there are so many children in general.
Emotional literacy is fine, but someone needs to hear you.
Yes, exactly. Somebody does need to hear you, but I feel that if you are competent in actually acknowledging your emotions and managing them, you probably don't really need anyone to hear you, because you'll be skilled in managing that yourself. And I feel that's what it is. It's about empowering the individual.
OK, Kevin, it's really good to talk to you. Kevin George, sports psychologist. Thank you very much.
Thank you.